Like, I'll attempt to make a video just explaining some very basic stuff. I don't know, I woke up and I'm just kind of exhausted right now. I'm not sure if I can find it in me to say the right things or to just have the energy to even express myself, what I mean. I spoke before about a world of artificial scarcity. Well, I try to describe it as I said, like the level of production, how it seems so obvious and basic to me when you look at, I mean, I know people talk about rising population and this crisis or that crisis. They say there's a housing crisis and things. But, I mean, you not see how ridiculous it all is that I mean, for instance, and I know things can get worn out and stuff like that, but I mentioned televisions before. I don't know if I said it quite right, but I mean, isn't it? I mean, isn't it basically true that most of the world, especially in the West, but all over the place, have probably had a microwave in their home since the 1970s or earlier. Most people probably have had a television in their home since long, just very long time, 70 years or something, a lot of places. And some of those old ones even exist, and I know that things get better over the years sometimes, like, there's improvements made to televisions and things like that, but how many fucking TVs do you need before you stop making them and say, I think we've got enough now? I mean, you're just... How do we not see, that we're just producing and producing and producing excess over what we would need, and that the human species as a whole is in large part just engaged in some just endless tail chasing sort of behavior where we just live lives from birth to death in pursuit of some money, but identifying as some sort of some pursuit. I mean, what do we do as a species? What is the purpose of our existence, of living the way that we have, continuing to go on, working some sort of, I don't know, various jobs and things like that one? I mean, how many TVs do we have to build before we say that I think we've got enough TVs, Is it when there's a million TVs for every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth? How many houses have to be built, when there's 10 houses, 100, 1,000 houses for every human being? Can we stop building and start living in these fucking houses, or what? At what point can we stop having to spend all our time in some sort of busy work just to get by, just to survive? At what point do we look back on the creations of past generations and of the generations we live in and say, our job is done and now it's time to live? At what point in our life are we gonna be allowed as a species, as a people, to have time for life, to be allowed to live for the time in which we are alive, instead of some distant promise of things improving after we're dead and buried? Which I think, if you actually look at the way the world seems to be headed, and from every metric you could say that that's completely false in a sense of what is happening to the physical world. I mean, you could say that from some religious aspect, yes, I mean, you can certainly make claims of some supernatural goodness, of a story of heaven and hell, or of some of how this is all just a test, and then when it's over, well, then we wake up in the real world, right? Well, when I get so tired of the concept of sacred cows, of the way in which we all have our deification of certain concepts and ideas, and we say we insist that we're not allowed to question anything. I mean, you can take religion as a for instance. We're not allowed to question the God or anything like that, because that would just be evil. Oh, evil to question, right? You're a sinner, I mean, how do we end up here in this situation where vast majority of people insist on our silence, on our obedience, on our servility, that these are virtuous, that to question the concept of authority, or the idea of this sort of busy work that we're forced to do from a young age just to survive, that we must make it all, though it is so sacred, never question it, never question the motivations of our glorious leaders, of our what are we doing here, man? I feel like I'm watching the world just I don't know. Imagine if you were like part of a species, a group of people where there were, say, 10,000 of you, and there's like a few, bosses at the top telling all of you what to do, and you had worked for generations and generations. You had built 100 million homes, and while there's still only 10,000 of you alive, nearly half of you lived under bridges or homeless, starving, even though you live in a world of such vast abundance where you're literally surrounded on all sides by, by shelter and food and abundance of every kind of thing you could imagine. You're surrounded by people that insist upon there being a shortage of everything. And literally all you had to do was wake up, open your eyes, and look around you, and you'll see that there's a vast abundance everywhere. But a relatively small number of people claim to own everything, I mean, there are people and groups of people that work that while there's people that claim to own, million acres of land or a million miles to be, they're in charge of that, That's the utter madness of this world is, left to wander without a home if you're not among the wealthy. The vast majority of people seem to not care in the least about that. Well, apparently, the amount of time that I have to speak on these videos just gets shorter and shorter no matter how many gigabytes of stuff I delete off of here. Suddenly a 10-minute video takes up more space than an hour-long video, and so on and so forth. The more I speak the truth, the less I'm allowed to be heard.